Alright guys, welcome back. We're out here in the garage this morning and we are going to start our trapping season off. We are going to take all of our footholds, all of our number 3 Victor soft catches that we've rigged up for fall trapping with our butterfly double stake swivels. And we've got all of our stakes welded up, 1/2 inch rebar with a, I believe it's a 3/4 inch nut on top, welded, and it's 18 inches long. And we're gonna get the propane hooked up to our burner here, and then that nice big black pot over there, we're gonna probably 3/4 fill that with water, and then we've got our trap wax. I think I usually use about half of 1 pound, so 1/2 pound of wax to do a dozen footholds. Willa and I are just out here getting the fire on. It's a little bit chillier this morning. I think it was around 3 degrees this morning outside. I'm not sure. We just started the fire, but it's about 55 in here this morning. I don't know why I go Fahrenheit. That's 55. Looks like it's about 13 degrees Celsius. But anyway, so yeah, that's what we're gonna do this morning, is get these traps not dyed, sorry. I don't dye my traps every year. Here, I'll show you. I ran these traps all last winter, and I mean, heck, they're still covered in wax, but you can actually see some wax on the pan there. They're still very waxy, so I mean, yeah, obviously if the wax is still on them, the dye is still underneath that. So yeah, I don't dye my traps every year, but I do wax them. So, and I also add cedar. I use cedar, but I add cedar to the water for scent control, I guess you could say. Same as I do with my snares, other than I don't wax my snares, obviously. But yeah, so we're not dyeing today. Everything's still got a good layer of dye on them. And the only thing that I did question to myself was, these are new stakes. So obviously the rebar is rusty. It's you know, got a new nut on there. So I would have liked to have dyed those, but I'm not going to make up a batch of dye strictly for 2 dozen stakes. But what I think I will do is, once I'm done waxing my traps, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dunk the stakes in the wax water, and just to help seal them up. The wax really seals the metal from being able to put the smell out of metal for the animals to smell. So yeah, we'll wax them. Like I said, I would have liked to have dyed them, but I'm not going to now. So anyway, let's get started. So we got the heat going here. We got 1 pot on my wood stove. It's going to be for boiling my coyote snares. So I've got a special pot strictly for boiling snares. It doesn't get any wax or anything like that ever in it. All that pot ever sees is water and cedar boughs. That's what I use to boil my snares. So at the beginning of every season, I boil all my snares, whether they got used or not. I boil them again, and I add a little bit of the green cedar, and it gives it a little bit natural smell. And because that's normally where I'm trapping, is in balsam and spruce and cedar bush. So I choose cedar because the other has a gum to it and can end up getting a little bit sticky, and you don't want your snares getting gummed up with a bunch of spruce sap or balsam. So I use cedar, and like I said, I just use the green part of the branch, if you will, what would be the equivalent of a leaf. Anyway, so that's on. It's getting heated up. We got a bit of steam coming off of it now. And now I've got my propane burner here going with the big pot of water. And once that gets warming up, we're going to add the wax to it. So I'll break that 1 pound brick into half, and I'll throw half of that into that big pot, and that's going to be for doing our footholds. The other thing I forgot to mention earlier was I have a bunch of drags. So, you know, you've all seen a drag, and length of chain attached, and that's for my winter trapping. Because here, I mean, we get down to -40, so obviously I'm not going to be pounding stuff into the ground when I'm winter trapping. So to run my footholds in the winter, I use drags, which works out great because, I mean, you got all the snow and that, so you can see the drag marks in the snow. And anyway, so I'm going to boil a bunch of snares, plus I'm going to boil and wax all my footholds, my stakes, and my drags. So anyway, I took a hammer to the wax here, and now we're just going to plunk a couple of these chunks into the water. So like I said, half of the pound does more than enough. So I'm lucky enough, I'm still on my lawn, and all I do, I come over to the spruce or the cedar tree on my lawn. Like I said, I just take the green, add that to my water. So that's probably good for the snares. So now for the footholds, I like to make it fairly small. Hard to see because of all the steam, but got a little bit of cedar in there, and the wax is just about melted. You can actually see the difference between snares that have been boiled and snares that haven't. But those will all get boiled now. So I like to coil all of them nice and tight. That way they are easy to transport. But yeah, so now we'll just start dropping those in. I'm actually going to take my snare gloves first. So I use 100% cotton. They're just cheap gloves, but that's what I handle all my snares with. And those also get boiled in the cedar and then dried, and then they go in a bag. So we're going to drop those into the water right now. So we got our gloves in there, so we'll let those just simmer. And our wax has all disappeared. So now we'll just start dipping our traps in. So one of the biggest things that you want to make sure you do when you're waxing traps, and trust me, I learned this the hard way. I learned it on YouTube. The first time I ever waxed traps, after I was done waxing them the first time, I said, I'm never doing this again, it was retarded. Then I watched some YouTube videos and I learned how to actually do it. So one of the biggest things you want to learn or make sure you do is that trap, the metal needs to become just as warm as the water that it's in. If you just take and dunk that trap real quick, the steel stays cold, and what happens is when you take it out, the wax is on top of the water, and when you take that trap out too quick, the steel is cold, and you end up with like 1/8 of an inch of wax on that trap. It cools down too quick on that steel, and you end up with just way too much wax. So this is why I can get away with 1/2 pound of wax to do all this waxing. You let that trap get nice and warm, and then you slowly take it up through the wax that's boiling on top, and it leaves you with a nice thin film of wax on that trap. Anyway, just a pointer. Okay, so now we got our gloves out of the water here. So now we're going to just start putting in some snares. As you can see, there's a lot that goes into prepping these traps for coyote trapping. Obviously, you don't have to do this stuff, you know, if you're just trapping beavers and things like that. But canines especially, they have such a keen sense of smell. You know, nothing can be touched by human scent. At least I don't. I know there's lots of trappers that do, and I don't know how they get away with it, to be honest, because every time I've touched a trap or a snare with my bare hands, you see the end result where the coyote comes up and they know that they know it's there. But anyway, we won't get into that. Okay, so we're getting some traps hung up there. Alright, so we got our last foothold here in the wax. So we're going to take that out. And then we're going to start dipping our drags. So now for these, usually what I do is go about halfway, find a link roughly, put my wire in, and I do that. Alright, take this chain out. Kind of nice doing all this at the same time, because while you're waiting for one thing, you can be doing another. Alright, well, we're getting there. Actually, one thing I do have to do is I've got, let's see, what is that? Is that number 12? I think it's 12 gauge maybe wire. That's my support wire that I use for my snares. So I buy it in a bulk roll like that, and then what I do is I cut about 10-15 foot lengths and roll them by hand, make them into smaller, and then I also got to boil those. So I only have one roll left, so I need to cut a bunch more of that stuff and get it rolled up. And then I also have like a 16 gauge rebar tie wire, and that is also for snare support, but it's more for like a fine tune. It doesn't take the whole weight of the snare, but where you need a little bit extra, you know, finesse. We've got the last of the support wire in the pot right now. As you can see, that water is getting pretty black. So that annealed wire is really dirty. So that's why I wait and do my support wire last. Because if I were to do the support wire first and then say my gloves and then my snares, all that stuff would just be covered in black crap. So I always do my wire last. Like I showed you, I do my gloves first, then I do my snares, and then the wire. But anyway, here's a little look at some of the stuff. So there's some of the support wire. And there's last little batch of Fox snares. That's just the 1/16 snares with the atom locks. And there's the footholds. They're still just drying off. They'll be ready to go this afternoon. One thing I still have left to do, actually it's the last step, is to set these traps and clean the dogs. Quite often the dog will actually get a little ball of wax on the end of it. So I usually just take my knife and scrape it off. And then you also want to make sure that you clean out the little notch right there on the pan where the dog sits. These are all night latched, so they should be good to go that way. But I always set all these traps before I take them out into the field. That way I know that they're totally ready to go. I think it's around 11:15 now. It probably took us maybe 2 hours to do all this. So that's... Oh, let's see, it's warm in here with the fire on, but that's a dozen footholds, probably about 4 or 5 dozen snares with enough support wire, all the drags, so worked out pretty good. So yeah, I mean, I see on Facebook and that a lot, people wondering how much wax, you know, to do a certain amount of traps, or how many traps can be done with a pound of wax. Obviously it kind of all depends on the traps and how thick you're putting your wax on, but as you guys seen, I did all those drags and the footholds with a pound of wax. And actually I did the rebar stakes too. They're outside. They were too long for the pot, so what I did was I did the nut end, and then I flipped them and I did the pointed end, and then what I did was I laid them out on the grass, and I was all done with the wax water. So then I just poured the wax water on top of the center of them to cover those in wax. So anyway, yeah, I mean, half a pound of wax, you can do, I don't know, you could probably do another 2 or 3 dozen traps. So wax goes a long ways, I find anyway, but that's just me. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this little video, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, remember, hit that thumbs up button. And if you guys made it this far and you're not subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's free, and you don't want to miss out on all the great content that we're putting out, right? Right. And leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys are doing, if you guys are starting to trap yet. I see a few guys online starting to put out a few beaver sets and coyote sets, so that's good. It means we're at a good time of year here. But okay guys, till next time. Ciao.